All right, welcome into the Warchant.com top 40 players for the upcoming football season. Always a pleasure, a lot of fun to do this. Last video we did, obviously, 31 through 40. This time around, we'll tackle 21 through 30. And this is, not that they're not all interesting, but I love this. This gets meaty here because you got a couple of quarterbacks to look at, got an interesting tight end prospect, I think an up-and-coming linebacker, a wide receiver with a ton of ability that just really hasn't put it all together just yet, and we got to see if his mind's right. So why don't we begin, though, first with Travis J. Gene, I know you want to talk about him. This is an area on the football field where Florida State has a ton of talent.
Yeah, I mean, I had him up. I think I had the high at 25. And let me tell you why. First of all, I got him in. I have a bias for Madison County kids. They always come in. They're so tough, and they've just got some swagger about them. I mean, this kid. And here's the thing. One of the reasons that jumped out at me: the tour of duty drills that we got to see, and you guys were all out there. I mean, you saw by the end, guys had their hands on their knees. There were guys that were really struggling. I only saw 2 or 3 players that they started out busting their butts, and in the last minute or two, they were still doing it. Travis J was one of those kids. He did not slow down 1% through that whole thing. He was going strong. And here's a guy that, you talk about how deep they are there, but Jeff, this guy could play cornerback, he can play safety. He played offense in high school too. So, I would not be surprised if packages there and special teams. I just think this guy is so versatile and so talented. I think he has he wasn't a 5-star, he's a 4-star, but I think he's got 5-star type ability. That I just think a guy this talented is going to get on the field and contribute as soon as he's eligible. Last year he would have, but last year he was not eligible. So this year he is.
That secondary has got to be better than it was a year ago, 2 years ago, obviously. And we haven't thought that they've lacked talent. There have been areas where some guys maybe didn't pan out, but really fundamentally they were never sound from a technique standpoint. They also never looked back for the ball. Athleticism wasn't in question, and again, they come into this season, it's not in question. If you get disciplined guys who are taught properly, proper technique, good footwork, I think Florida State can take a huge leap forward in the secondary.
The question I have with Travis J, Ira, is I'm not sure what position. I know they have him at cornerback, but do you think that's his natural position? Is there any chance they move him to safety? And the reason I ask that, and it's not fair to the kid because he didn't really play it. He didn't play at all last year. In the practices we saw, the first 3 practices we saw, it seemed like he was almost exclusively matching up with DJ Matthews. And that's a tough dude to try to cover in one-on-one drills. And he did not do a good job of covering DJ Matthews at all. But a lot of people wouldn't in one-on-one drills. But my question is, he's a freak of an athlete, and he's got the size, but I don't know necessarily if they know for sure if he's a corner or a safety.
They definitely, and I talked to Adam Fuller earlier this summer, or I guess late spring during the hiatus. And their plan is to start him at corner. They want to see if he can be a corner because they think he has that ability. And the way he explained it is in their defense, if you've got a great corner, that's more important than a great safety. So they want to give him every opportunity at that position. Now, I don't know if he's going to start at that position this year or not. I think he's going to be in that competition. But until he shows he can't play that position, that's where they're going to have him lining up. And I agree with Gene. I think we all do. The guy's immensely talented, a real hard worker. Exactly the kind of player Florida State needs in this next generation. And the return game is important, as Gene said, also, because I think he's going to get a big look at the return game. I
just thought when you look at the defense, Akeem Dent and Asante Samuel are very good corners. I know Akeem Dent can't catch, but he can cover people. And then you also have Meiko Dotson. So if you're trying to get Travis J on the field, I don't know if maybe you try to mix him in the safety or somewhere else where he's going to get more reps. Because I think we all agree, he's the type of guy you want on a football field.
Should be noted on this list, this particular segment that we're going over, Travis J came in at number 30. You have Raymond Woodie III. You have Cyrus Fagan. You have Meiko Dotson at various points here, 21 through 30. So you've got a bunch of guys in the secondary, a lot of defensive backs that we're looking at here and grouping in. And it's why I think, per Ira's reference, the first list that we did, where we did 31 through 40, there are segments on this team where you look at it, you go, man, if this guy realizes his potential, if they're able to get something out of this guy, if this transfer works out here, this segment looks really strong. And I think that's true of the secondary. I've said it a couple times now, but just looking at the list that we put together for the top 40, you see all these guys kind of grouped together.
Yeah, and I know we're not going to talk a lot about some of these guys 25 to 30, but I think all those guys could be really good players. It's Raymond Woodie, I think, has a ton of potential. We saw as a true freshman last year, he looked really impressive in moments when he wasn't injured. And then I like Cyrus Fagan. I think if I had to pick a guy that's going to kind of come out of nowhere possibly this year, especially later in his career, I think it could be Cyrus Fagan. He didn't play for early in the middle part of last year, but he had a lot of tackles when he got in games. He was very active. He was around the football a lot. He's a physical guy for a safety. I have a feeling he's going to play a lot more this year than people think.
Let me segue, Gene. Talk about Cam McDonald. I have an opinion about him. I know you do too. I want to hear what your opinion is because, man, you look at him, you just think that guy could be an absolute breakout player. He plays a position that is crucial in Mike Norvell's offense, as we all know. A lot of people would tab him as the guy who emerged at that position. Although I have my questions, I want to hear your thoughts on him first.
Yeah, first, I would say there's opportunity because obviously you lose McKitty and Neighbors. So, I mean, he's the guy there now. And you go back, we don't know a whole lot about what Mike Norvell's done, but what he's going to do. But we look back at Memphis and he runs a lot of 12 personnel. So that means Cam's going to be on the field a lot. And what he also likes to do, you see last year, a lot of times you would take that tight end and put him out move him out in the slot. And if I remember watching practice, Cam McDonald's kind of a hybrid guy. So he did a lot of reps with the wide receivers. He just looks like that perfect fit for Mike Norvell to a guy who's going to be a pass catching, versatile guy that can do a lot of these things. And you see Cam McDonald, you see he's got the athleticism and the ability to be a big time player. So I think this is one of those situations where I think the change in coaching staff is really going to benefit some players more than others. And I think this is going to be huge for Cam McDonald. So that's why I would not be surprised to look at the end of the day, man, he could be a top 20 type contributor to this offense.
One more thing I'd add on to that position that really I just started thinking about as we're talking. Think about the upgrade the tight ends are getting in coaching. They're going from a guy who didn't ever coach tight ends before on the previous staff, who basically was brought in as a recruiter, to Chris Thompson, who's been a head coach, has been an offensive line coach for decades. I mean, they are the upgrade at that position is monumental, and that you assume a guy like Cam McDonald should really benefit from that.
Don't you think also like the biggest weakness that Cam McDonald will have in that position, we all think is probably the blocking aspect of it, which is 50% of it, maybe more, probably more with this offense. But if you have a former O-line coach coaching your tight ends, well, he's gonna make sure as best as he can that dude can at least hold the edge a little bit and won't get run over, and he could maybe turn McDonald into at least a decent blocker. And if he's just a decent blocker, then I think he's a big deal in the passing game. If you can play him on running downs, then man, he can light up some teams and play action passing. Don't sneeze when I'm talking, Jeff. That's really rude.
It was not a sneeze; it was a cough, and I was fighting it off because your points were so interesting. I was really struggling with that, and I was trying to let you finish it. But okay. So you brought up the point I was going to say, which is he's got to get a lot better at blocking, and he's got a guy in place to help him do that, because that's the only way that he's going to be justly rewarded and be on that field as much as you think he's going to be, because you got to block at that position, especially the way Norvell uses the tight end. Yes, they catch a lot of passes. I think each of the last 3 years, tight ends caught more than 30 passes in his offense. That's all true. But you got to block if you're going to play the position. And Cam, as of right now, has a reputation. I'll just tell you, people I've talked to being a little soft. You wouldn't think it looking at him. A little bit of soft is not a good reputation to have in a position where you're going to have to block, because you're going to play some H-back in a weird way. You're going to be on the line of scrimmage where you got to block as a sixth lineman, and you get to go out for passes, obviously. But that's your just reward when you do the blocking. Really quickly, I know we got to get to the quarterbacks on this part of the list, and that's going to be what everybody wants to hear. But I really think Jaleel McRae at linebacker has a chance to be a very, very good football player. Between him, real quick talking points, him and Meiko Dotson, the transfer coming in at corner, how much do we think he's going to play? And then how big a step forward does Jaleel McRae make?
I think Meiko Dotson's going to play a lot. I mean, he didn't come here as basically a grad transfer. It sounds like he's going to have 2 more years, but he's a guy that obviously 9 interceptions last season. That's a lot more productive than anybody else they have on this defense. So I think he's going to play. I don't know if it's going to be is more of a slot corner. I think there's different ways they can use him. I don't know if he's going to be one of the 2 starting corners down in and down out. But he's definitely going to play. And Jaleel McRae may end up starting. He's as much a football player. When we talked about Travis Jay in the last episode, as a guy who's just a football player. That's what Jaleel McRae is. I mean, he's one of those guys that just wants to play football and inflict pain at that middle linebacker position. And I think and that's another position where I think they got a big upgrade in coaching.
And it just jumped out at me too. repeating the same thing we've talked about, but the secondary, how can the secondary not be so much? When you think about this, you had Meiko Dotson, who led the country in interceptions last year. You throw in, Akeem Dent's going to be better. We know what Samuel can do. We just talked about Cyrus Fagan, how much better he's looking. We expect a lot from him. And you bring back a Hamza Nasruddin, who there's a lot of, but we're going to bring him up later. I don't mean to jump the gun on him, but I mean, you just start talking about like, wow, how was the secondary this bad last year and how good they could be in 2020?
Probably unfair of me to skip right over Warren Thompson. Suffice to say, Corey and I think he's going to be an impactful player this year. I think he's got to get right between the ears and get focused. The talent's never been a question. I'll just summarize it with that. He came in at number 27. We all think he has potential to be a very, very good player. But let's get to the quarterbacks, because we'll start right off the bat with a little bit of controversy. Corey had James Blackman as number 6 on this list. I had him unranked. So right off the bat, a bit of a discrepancy,
a little bit.
And so I won't start with Corey and I, because clearly we've made it abundantly clear how much we differ on James Blackman's important to this football team. Ira and Gene, fire away on James Blackman coming in at number 23.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had him. I don't have my list in front of me, but I think I had him in the low 20s, probably right next to Chubba Purdy.
You mean the high 20s or the low 20s?
Well, it depends on how I'm talking, Corey. Man, you put this guy in a Zoom call, and he's going to start throwing shade at Gene.
You're next, Gene.
Wow. I think they're kind of inseparable. I think those are the 2 leading candidates for the job. I have no idea which way they're going to go. A lot of it's going to depend on. I think we would have saw some things sort out in the spring, but it didn't happen because they only had the 3 practices. So, I ended up just kind of lumping those 2 guys together. I think Chubba Purdy, from a physical standpoint, and the fact we haven't seen anything bad out of him yet. We've seen all James's warts. We haven't seen Chubba's. So it's just hard for me to put James up much higher, because I don't know that he's going to win the starting job. And the other part of it is, I don't know that anybody who starts at quarterback this year is going to be a huge difference maker. Again, going back to when I think of most important players, I don't know that Florida State with James Blackman at quarterback versus Florida State with Chubba Purdy versus Florida State with Tate Rodemaker or Jordan Travis. I don't know how many wins difference. I don't know what the war is for any of those guys. So I just kind of throw them in the early 20s because they're quarterbacks.
Isn't part of the thing, and I guess Jeff can answer to this because he didn't have them ranked, but the recency bias. I mean, we all, the last remembrance we have of James Blackman was that Sun Bowl, and it to say horrific would be too nice. I mean, it was such an awful performance, and I think that's all sticking with us. So it's really hard to look beyond that. But I mean, the reason I think I had him around where Ira did, somewhere around 20, and I'm just going based on history, because we don't know. Like we said, there's 4 quarterbacks. We don't know. But traditionally, the guy with all the experience usually at least starts out as the starter at the beginning of the season. Now, if that happens, I wouldn't be very surprised at all. I probably would have been expected. That wouldn't last through the whole season. But I think there's a better chance than the other guys, in my opinion, that very first game, assuming that's West Virginia, there's no cancellation, James Blackman's going to be the guy that rolls out there. And, we'll see.
Well, I would say this. You're right. Certainly, it was probably kicking around my brain that last game of the season for James Blackman, the bowl game, which is as bad a game as a quarterback can ever play. I think the other reason that I ranked him or didn't rank him, I'm surprised I didn't rank him. I thought I put him at 38th or something, but I guess I did. Was because, listen, I think it's imperative that they start over here. I think James is broken. I think that was the culmination of just how broken he was leading up to that moment. I don't know that he has a distinct advantage with all those starts that he's played, because A, he turns the football over. No coach likes that. B, this is going to be an entirely new offense, and they didn't have spring to learn it and implement it and install it. So he's starting on even ground with the other quarterbacks. And I think there's a distinct possibility, 1, if not 2 of those other quarterbacks are much more talented than James Blackman. So I factored all those things in. This is not a year where Florida State has a chance to win the Atlantic Division. If you're building towards something 2 and 3 years from now, James Blackman does not need to be part of that. And by not being part of that, I mean as a starter. James is a great kid. I feel like I've got to throw that caveat out there every time I criticize him, because I do like James Blackman, and he's been through a terrible situation at Florida State. He got absolutely screwed over, thrown into the fire way before he was ready by Jimbo, and the injury that happened to DeAndre Francois. I know all that. He hasn't been coached well. He's gone through a transition with another coaching staff. I hate it for the young man. I really do. but I think it's led to a brokenness that can't be repaired. And moreover, and to be real direct, he's just not that good. He's not that talented. So I would move on and go with the younger player.
I wish Aslan could put little memes of people eating popcorn in mine and Gene's spots so we can wait for Corey's retort here.
No, I don't have
Number
a big
6.
one. You guys know me. You guys talk to me every week. I'm not a big believer in James Blackman. I'm just a big believer.
At number 6.
I'm a big believer in the quarterback position. We can't sit here having watched football for decades and think that the quarterback position isn't an important position. It's the most important position. So whoever wins the job has to be ranked pretty high on your list of most important players. And so you
had him and Chubba both in the top 10.
I had Blackman 6, I had Chubba 7. One of those guys is going to be very important. The other guy probably won't be important at all. So I kind of just I played both sides there.
You put one chip on black and one on red?
Exactly. So, but also, the kid that played at Memphis for the last 3 years isn't any more talented than James Blackman. He just isn't. I've watched their games. That kid was not a special dynamic quarterback, but he won games and he made enough plays to win games. I know we're going up in competition for Norvell's offense and Dillingham's offense, but if you can just get one of these guys to be decent, you can win 7 or 8 or 9 games. There's nothing in me that thinks that James Blackman can't be decent. I know he's not super. I know he's not going to come out and have an All-American season, but I think he can be decent. And if he's decent, Florida State can score points and win games. And I we'll see. But I'm not ready to completely write him off because he had Jimbo as a freshman and then Willie for 2 years. There's a chance, not a huge chance, but there's a chance he takes a big step forward, matures, handles adversity better, and has a nice season.
Jeff's nodding his head.
I did want to say that James can take solace in knowing that Jeff one time left Roberto Aguayo, I think, out of his top 40.
That's true.
He was maybe the best kicker in the history of college football. So
I don't know that I left him out of my top 40. I just had him at like 40 or 39 because he's a freaking kicker. And that's how that works. But
and how many more national championships would FSU have with a decent kicker, Jeff?
Yeah,
that is true. That is true. All right, so we need to go to the other quarterback, and on this list, Chubba Purdy's at 22. Aslan had him number 3. He obviously believes he's going to be the starter. Corey, you had him at number 7, which means you think he's going to be the starter.
He's in the mix.
Or he's right there to be in the mix because you had James Blackman at 6, which was a preposterous argument you just made. So that's
no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was. Ira's number 20. You had him at 24. I had him at 26, and Gene had him at 30. All right, who wants to begin? Well, Aslan can't speak right now because he's directing the show. So Corey, you've got.
Let me ask you a question.
There he is.
Hey, cameo.
All I'm going to say about Chubba, I just want to underscore what Iris said. We haven't seen the warts. His film looks all right. And my whole dark horse thing for his candidacy is that I really like Scott Satterfield at Louisville. And he was all over the kid, and we stole him away. So why not?
I'm with you. I'm with you, by the way. I've got him starting, too. I think he should start. And
I want to ask each of y'all a question.
Yeah.
If you knew for sure that if Norvell came out tomorrow and said Chubba Purdy is the starting quarterback.
Number 6.
Yeah.
Where would you have him ranked?
3rd.
Well, I didn't have him third, but I'm saying you guys are you got both everybody. Each of you guys ranked your quarterbacks in the mid-20s.
Well, because we don't.
One of them is going to be
all 4 of them in the top 10.
One of them is going to be very, very important.
As far as we know right now, they're all just a guy. I don't know that any of them is a difference maker. I mean, yeah, they're going to be playing quarterback, but we always have this discussion. It's like you feel like. Whoever wins the conference should be the coach of the year. You feel like whoever's the quarterback is the most important player, but I don't know that you have to be a difference maker to some degree.
I mean, even if you're bad, that's important.
Oh, come on, man.
I mean, you're important to the team. You're important to the cause of the team.
We're going to get into semantics about picking our top 40.
It's just bizarre that you got all 3 of you guys don't have a quarterback ahead of number 24.
Because the offensive line has been putrid, and if it remains putrid, none of them have a chance to succeed, even if they're good. So I think until you can prove up front that you've got to give a quarterback an opportunity to make plays, none of them will have a chance. I'm not so sure we will this year. I agree they're important. All quarterbacks are important. They touch the ball on every play on offense. I got it. But if you can't block, you can't win. We've seen that.
Well, that goes back to Gene's pick of Jordan Travis pretty high. But also, Aslan, could we put you into Corey's spot?
What's the matter with you?
No, ready to roll, man. I'm just hanging out.
Hey, what are I just would talk about math on this. Again, we don't want to belabor this point. Probably need to move on real quick. But if, to your point, if the quarterback's the most important position having up there, we've all said any of the four could win it, which means we should put all four in the top 10, which means we'd hit on 25%. That's not what this is about. I mean, it's not. We got to play the percentages and how much a guy has a chance to contribute and be impactful this season. Well, the odds are if you do that 75, you're going to be 75% wrong.
Well, right. I don't think any of us think Rodemaker has a chance. I think Travis is a good point.
I don't think you say that.
Yeah, I shouldn't. Rodemaker could win the job. None of us had him ranked. I don't think we did. But to my overall point, whoever wins the job is going. I basically played both sides. I admit that. Like I did that last year with Blackman and Hornibrook. Or the year before with Blackman and Francois, I ranked them like 2 and 3.
That's just what you do.
That's my thing. But one of them is going to be vital. One of them is going to be vital to the 2020 season. Whether if it's a true freshman like Chubba and he can't pick up the offense or he can't read defenses well enough, real well at the beginning, that's going to be really, really important. And if he's awesome, it's going to be really, really important. But either way, I think a quarterback, where you put him in the mid-20s. I just think that's because we don't know who it's going to be. So you guys were all covering your bases. I'm willing to take a shot. I know I got one completely wrong in the top 10. Completely wrong.
I think on that note, it's summarized nicely. Go ahead, Aslan. You want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, think about if a quarterback was able to see Tamorian Terry running scot-free down the sideline in Virginia at Scott Field. Imagine if somebody could have gotten one more yard in that scramble against Wake Forest. Imagine if you make one less turnover in the Sun Bowl against Arizona State.
Who are you talking about, Aslan?
You're talking about 2 or 3 more wins. And that's a huge difference in the way that this looks. So, quarterback's really important. I think a guy like Chubba, if he comes in and doesn't make the errors and makes 1 or 2 more plays in 1 or 2 different games, you're talking about a huge difference.
Let me ask you guys
2 more. Go ahead.
Let me ask you guys one more thing. So, I think this might bring some clarity. If you had to pick a starting quarterback, with everything that's happened in this with this fan base and what's happened in this program the last 3 or 4 years, and you're a first-year head coach, are you going with James Blackman, or are you, unless this is not knowing what's going to happen in preseason camp, are you going to go with James Blackman, a guy that probably a lot of fans are done with, or are you going to go with a freshman that projects possible hope for the future?
Well, the other reason that I'm going to go with a freshman is that it also gives me more time because they're more forgiving of a freshman making mistakes at that position than they are James Blackman, who you'd be rolling out there yet again despite overwhelming evidence that he can't play.
Can't play well. Yeah, I don't know, man. I really don't know because, man, that West Virginia game is so important. It's so important. And you don't want to just lose a game. And I'm not saying Chubba. And again, Blackman's not a sure thing either.
I was going to say, there's no guarantee when you roll James out there, Corey, that he's going to help you win that game.
If you're Norvell and you're 52% confident in Blackman and 48% on Purdy, but you're like, well, one's a freshman, let's go ride with him because he's got 3 more years. I don't know if you do that. Whoever gives you the most comfort, you play in that first game because it's so vital. This team, all it does is lose its first games. It's always got a losing record in September. You need to win your first 2 games at least. And so
part of the losing. I don't think
it's not who gives you a best chance in 2021 now.
But at the same time, you think about the way one of the factors that really turned people against Willie was that he wasn't giving James Blackman a chance. He kept riding with DeAndre. People felt like, okay, we know what DeAndre is.
Yeah.
Especially with the bum knee. Can we move on? Can we try something else? And I think that's the risk you run with just going with a guy who's more experienced. That's, again, I think people you want to capitalize on that excitement about the future. And I'm not saying you don't give James a chance, but I think, in my opinion, James has to make it a no doubt competition in preseason. It can't be he's just a little bit better. I think he has to no doubt win it, and then you go with him. But if it's not,
we really, this is the longest segment we've ever had. But with Dillingham last year, he had that true freshman quarterback, the 5-star, the Knicks kid, and remember their first game. Well, that kid was pretty awful the whole game, but then made the play when it mattered most
to beat Oregon.
To beat Oregon, which was a very good team. But he wasn't very good for most of that game. And I don't know that Florida State can have a performance like that in a game like this and win it. They just can't. You've got to get some production out of your quarterback in that first game. You don't want to just give away a game because you think that your freshman is the future. You've got to win that game, and then both of them play against Sanford. I don't know.
I really, at this point, totally agree with Corey in this thing because I think that first game, what Mike Norvell needs to do is win as many games as possible. Yeah. We talked about that. When Corey and I did a thing on the 2010 season, how Jimbo Fisher was able to legitimize what he was doing by getting more wins out there. I think Norvell needs to get, if that means there's a 1% more chance starting James Blackman in that first game because of the experience he's been through it, it's going to give you a better chance to win. He needs to do it. There's nothing saying just because he starts that first game means he's going to start the whole season. Matter of fact, if Blackman starts that first game, my guess is at some point Chubba or somebody else will probably end up being the full-time starter later in the season. But I'm not looking at the future here. You don't want to sacrifice that for this season. He absolutely needs to legitimize himself. He needs to crank up the recruiting. He needs to do all those things, and the only way he's going to do that right now is to get more wins on the field. So that, to me, it's whoever, even if it's a 1% more chance in that first game, you got to start that guy, whoever it is.
I think we've come to a conclusion here that where we fundamentally disagree is I don't think James Blackman can possibly be the answer, in the sense that I don't think he gives you a better chance to win that game. I think that you could go with Rodemaker and he gives you a better chance to win that game. And I don't think Rodemaker is going to start. Now, listen, freshmen are unpredictable. We've had a crazy spring. We didn't get to have one and all that. So we'll see. And that's why I was timid with my rankings, because I just believe if it's even close, and I think it will be, then you go with Chubba Purdy, because I don't think James gives you a better chance to win that game. Hence the reason I said I think he's broken. I don't think he's going to go. But mentally he's been broken down, and I've seen overwhelming evidence with the emotions on the sideline, the downward spiral that he can't get himself out of. He turns the ball over. He's not immensely talented. I don't think he'll win the job. I think he'll get outshined by one of the other quarterbacks. And that's why I don't disagree with the point about winning. You got to win. I just don't think James gives you a better chance to win.
Are we never going to get to Ontario Wilson at 21? Are we just never going to – Pokey's just never going to get
Pokey.
Enough for us to say we think Ontario Wilson's very good. No controversy surrounding that pick. Yeah. He's 21.
And very fast. They all the players say he's like the fastest guy. Him
that's
and
crazy.
Marion are the two fastest guys on the team.
So when we come back on the next one, we'll wrap this one up. We'll take a look at 11 through 20. It'll be fun. We didn't mean to dish you, Ontario. We know you're a good player. There's just other controversy going on here. Thanks for watching the Warchant.com Top 40.